So what is the topic of our topic of the teaching? The main topic? The eight mindful steps to happiness. Okay, so this is the right kind of effort. Remember that? What is this? The 10 feathers? Okay. So I remember 2 weeks ago we talked about the 4 important aspects of the great effort. The sama, what is right effort? Sama, Sama Vayama. Yes, it's great that she has all the notes, right? I always get the answers. Yeah.
On Skype that one night.
Oh, yeah.
She was answering the questions paper and she was reading from the paper.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Sama Vayama. And we talk about that, so the 4 aspects of the right effort, right? And the first one is to prevent the arising of unarisen, unwholesome states. I remember I talked about that, but when I look back to that talk, I found that it was not very, very good. It wasn't very coherent. It was very scattered. So I decided to redo it again. Okay, I'll redo it from another perspective. And so we all know that this is the overcoming of the unwholesome states which are tainted by the defilements. So the defilements is not any defilements in the external world, is our own defilements, the mental defilements that we are talking about. So what are these defilements? Defilements like mean afflictions or negativities and all that. So all these defilements actually are obstacles to our spiritual growth, and of course to the eventual enlightenment of our mind. And also these are actually hindrances to this path of purification. So we all have all these defilements, and that's why we need to develop this meditative mind in order to be aware that I have such defilement arising right now, and what am I going to do? So at the gate, you know that this defilement is a guest, and you know whether that guest is an invited guest or uninvited guest. So if it is uninvited, but yet it has come in because you have lost the awareness, you forgot to close the gate, and it come in, and it plays with you inside your mind for some time, and then you start to realize, hey, what's up? Why are you here? Why am I having fun with you? And you start to see, you start to take a second back, and a step back is, the gate is open, wide open, and I'm not aware, and this guest is not supposed to be here. Okay, are you going to try to push it out? You trying to strangle him? Trying to kill him? What can you do? What can you do? No answer.
Go back to your object, your meditative object.
Yeah, great. That's what I talked about just now. Go back to your meditative object. That means you become mindful. You pull that string of mindfulness. Put it back, and then anchor it on your meditative object. Then that invited guest will just naturally go out, will fade away, go out. Okay, that's what mindfulness is for, and that's why it brings happiness. Okay, and the moment that you become aware and you try to pull the string of mindfulness, when you are pulling that string of mindfulness, that's the right effort. Yeah. So you know fetters, right? Fetters, that means shackles. Right? Shackles. Obstacles, shackles. That's hindering the 10 fetters and the 5 hindrances. And you think that 10 fetters and the 5 hindrances are completely separate things. No. Actually, the 5 hindrances are inside the 10 fetters. But these 5 hindrances actually hinder us more than the 10 fetters. So these are, and also the 5 hindrances. When you talk about the 5 hindrances, people always relate that to the development of mindfulness. The 5 hindrances in the development of mindfulness. That means it's stopping or hindering the development of mindfulness. But whereas the 10 fetters is the general hindrances to the development of your own spiritual growth. Okay? And mindfulness is of course one part of your development to this spiritual growth. So let us look at these 10 fetters. So fetters overcome for first stage of enlightenment. Mind you, this is all theoretical thing. But yet when you look at it and you check on yourself, and you will see how these things would actually stop or stopping you or putting like an obstacle on your development. And this enlightenment, and people think that, enlightenment, that means I'm going to become a Buddha or whatever. There are so many stages of enlightenment, and there are at least 4 stages, right? The first stage, the second, and the third, and then the fourth stage. So these are the stages of enlightenment. It's just like a ladder. You're going up and up and up, and you abolish certain fetters, and certain fetters are not going to hinder you anymore, even though they may be around, but you don't allow them to come in. And even though when they come in, they don't take away your attention. Okay, and so, and actually, some people using some of the fetters as an object of meditation too, like greed. Like greed, people can use greed as an object of meditation and realizing, greed. If I don't have this greed, then I may be sort of wandering here and there. So they use that greed as an object of meditation. How greedy I am? Why am I greedy? How, what can I stop it? Or what's the whole intention of that greed behind? Then they start digging into that particular fetter. Some school of meditation does use those as a meditative object too. So in order to really abolish these unwholesome mental states, we need to be able to recognize them before we can start to eradicate them. So what are these fetters? Can you see? So belief in the existence of a permanent self or soul. We'll go into detail of this. We just have a overview of this first, okay? And then doubt in the teachings of the Buddha, the second fetter. And then the third one is belief that one ends all sufferings just by following rules and rituals. And then the second group of fetters that one has to overcome in order to reach the second stage and the third stage of enlightenment is the greed for sensual pleasures, and aversion, hatred, ill will, etc. We are very familiar with these two. And actually these are the second group of fetters, which actually are obstacles or shackles for the enlightenment. And so you think, hey, this is very strange. And it seems that I am having a lot of greed, I'm having a lot of aversion. Does it mean that I have attained that first stage of enlightenment? People will think that I don't have any of these. I believe in the teachings of the Buddha, and I believe in the existence of a permanent self, and I don't believe in this. That means I have achieved that first stage of enlightenment. You could say so as an encouragement to yourself. But honestly, when you go into meditation, you notice really sometimes doubts will arise. Doubts about the teachings will arise. And belief in this permanency of your own existence will arise. That's why you don't like all these changes. And that's why you don't like all this sickness or, any changes in a relationship and everything. So sorry, you haven't reached that first enlightenment yet. Okay? So, and the third group that leads to reach the fourth stage of enlightenment, that means the stage of final liberation, is the first is the subtle desire to exist in fine material form. Fine material form, that means a very, very subtle material form. And there is a very, very subtle desire, and so subtle that really with a very gross mind one cannot actually observe that. And then the second one is the subtle desire to exist in immaterial form. That means the God and the goddesses, when in immaterial form, that means there is no such thing as a body. Okay? And the God and the goddesses, or you can call them angels in the Western languages, are considered to be immaterial form. And yet, there is a very subtle desire to exist in that kind of form. That's why the God and goddesses or the angels are actually continuously, enjoying themselves in the celestial world, because unknowingly they have this desire, and also in that environment that they are in, they don't have teachings like this, so that they don't have a mind that actually can see that everything that they are experiencing is a cause of is a psycho existence of sufferings. Okay, so there is no desire to liberate themselves from that sensual pleasures, okay, or from that immaterial form. And then this conceit or the underlying perception of a self-identity. And these are actually the last stage. These are all really very, very subtle mental formations, very subtle. And we even though we cannot perceive what they meant, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Yes, Bill?
I was thinking about two people as you were talking. The philosopher David Hume and the American lady Emily Dickinson.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both involved in this business of who am I? One I found negative, Hume. Emily, very positive. She has a kind of cheery, oh, hello, I'm nobody, who are you?
Yeah.
I kind of like that spirit.
Yeah. Well, what he talked about is sort of like a Chinese Zen practice. Who am I? Or who are you before you're born? Or does the dog has a Buddha nature? These are all they call Gong'an, K-O-A-N, Gong'an. That means a phrase for them to contemplate on, that to develop this kind of very diligent inquiry into the mind processes. Okay, very diligent inquiry, and some of the teachers could sit there 10 hours just to dive into that kind of contemplation. And sometimes they just need like this, and they understand, and the whole mental field just open up like infinite space. And if you have time to read the poems written by my grand teacher, Grand Teacher Master Xun. Maybe Eva can actually send out the English version. You have the English version, right? Master Xun. The empty clouds. Yeah. Maybe you can send it out to these guys. You can see when he actually become enlightened or liberated at this lifetime, not to become a Buddha, but actually liberated. I think that was at least. I can't really say what stage he was at. I don't think I have that right to say. I better not say it. But he was. It was during a retreat, and in the Chinese Zen tradition, that's, I think it was 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Anyway, in the late afternoon, they have tea. The attendant monk would carry tea in a pot, already made, and then they have Chinese buns, for them to eat. They sleep in the meditation hall. The meditation hall is like this, and there are branches like that all around the meditation hall. And then behind the benches, there is a curtain. And behind the curtain is their bed. Okay? So it's like a dormitory. It's round, like squares. And so everyone has their mattress, have everything in there. So they sleep and then they meditate, they sleep and meditate. They are really serious meditators, day and night. So in late afternoon, they go round with this pot of tea, and so everybody hold their cup out, and the bun is there. They serve the bun there, and wait until you have the tea, then you can eat and drink. When the attendant monk reached his Master Xun's place, he was the first one to receive the tea. He poured the tea down, and he poured too much, and it overspilled, and because it burned, right? So he let go of the cup, and it cracked on the floor. And right at that moment, the whole mental space opened up, and he saw completely bright light, and everything he saw infinite. And he said, with the crackling noise of the cup, I saw the whole breakup of the whole universe. Something like that. Okay, the whole breakup of the whole universe. That means there is no sustaining material form. And it was a very beautiful poem. Maybe I should take it up and share it with you guys next week. Beautiful, beautiful poem. I don't know whether there's English version for it, but I could try to translate it myself. But you can see at that time there is not even this material body, and not even this really subtle existence in any form. Not even a self. Okay, and even the universes break up. And so, who am I? Right? And even such thing as the universe could break up and could be non-sustaining. It's so impermanently changing. So who am I, really? We are nothing. We are just a whole glob of changing energy. That's all. But we've never been taught like that. When we grow up, everybody taught us that we need to be somebody. Right? You need to be somebody. You need to go to university. You need to do something. You need blah, 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 blah. And all these things. So it makes you become a blah, 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 blah. Makes you become wanting to become a blah, 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 blah. And so that created a very, very conceding perception, a deceiving perception that we are somebody, and this self is a permanent self. It's actually a very interesting thing when we talk about this self, but it's a very, very difficult thing to talk about too. Let us don't talk about it tonight. So we know this 10 feathers, and the last one is the restlessness and worry. Look, yes, so don't worry, Eva. Okay? You're not there yet. This thing hangs on to you, even though on the stage 4, this is the last thing you actually eradicate. It's nice to know, right? It's so encouraging to know that it's okay to worry. It's okay to become agitated, irritated, because I'm not there yet. So it's great, right? So I think you will enjoy understanding these 10 fetters to shed light into your practice. Okay, so the 10 fetters. And then the last one is the ignorance. Of course, with ignorance, we have all these things, right? Because of ignorance, we have all these things. All these things. Just because of ignorance. All right? Without ignorance, these things don't exist. So ignorance is just like a piece of paper, just on a curtain, just between us and whatever world. And we think that, there's nothing because we see and we believe, but ignorance is just like that. It actually distort your every perception. Okay, because of ignorance, it can distort every perception, whether it's the mind, whether it's the eyes, the ears, the nose, the smell, the taste, or the touch, or even the mind. It distorts everything, and because it distorts, and that's why we see things, ignorantly, and that's why we have all these difficulties, all these fetters. So encouraging, evil, right? That makes your weekend. Okay. The whole life. Okay, so let us look at the fetters overcome for first stage of enlightenment. Why do we need to talk about these fetters? Because if you want to be happy, you need to be mindful that these fetters exist. Only when you become mindful of the existence of these fetters and you vow to abolish these fetters. Okay? Even though it sounds very theoretical, but yet, by understanding the theories, we know when we come to practice, we know, I'm experiencing this. Not just blind meditating, So for experienced meditators like you guys, you need to really start digging into the theories now in order to sort of validate your own experience so that you could actually proceed further. So believe in the existence of a permanent self or a soul. So in the Western society, you always talk about this soul. In the Western religion, they always talk about this soul. This soul, they think, is a permanent entity. And believing that this physical form, this perception and this feeling, the thoughts and the consciousness are one. And this belief in this permanent self, that starts with believing all these, these are all one and they are the same as the soul. Do you agree with, you understand this part? So that, what are these? The physical form, the perception, the feeling, the thoughts, and the consciousness. What kind of name can we give them? The
self.
The kankas, yes. And what's the English word for that?
Aggregates.
The aggregates, good. The aggregates, yes. So the aggregates, we think that, it came into life and currently we possess all these aggregates, then it will leave our body and go to another existence after death. So in other words, people believe that this soul is the permanent, eternal, and never-changing entity. And I think that's most of the Western religion believe in, right? And this is actually a very wrong perception. This is really not true. When you start to actually sit there on a cushion and start to meditate, and you start to understand, this mind keeps on changing, and this mind keeps on changing, and we can improve them, and we can change them when we can progress. Or we can regress to become more miserable. But we can progress to become more happier. So this is actually not permanent. And how can, if the soul is permanent, that means you're born with that soul. And that soul will never change in this whole span of your lifetime. But these aggregates do change. The thoughts change, the consciousness change, the feeling change. Every moment of life. And how can they be called permanent? So this is one of the very difficult obstacle for one who actually have this kind of belief in. Obstacle to become enlightened. So if we think that this physical form or this is permanent, that means there is no way that we can change our future. Because what's the point? Our karma is permanent. That means our karma is permanent. If the soul is permanent, that means our karma is permanent. But karma is impermanent. Karma is ever changing, right? Whatever you have done in the past brings you to whatever you are right now, and whatever you are doing right now brings you to whatever you will be in the future. But if you believe in a permanent soul, that means I'm born like this, and even when I'm growing old, I'll be like this, and when I die, I'll be like this. But can you be like that? Otherwise, there is no aging. There is like no dying, right? So this is a very funny thing. Well, they believe that the aggregates possesses the soul, one soul, or the soul causes the combination of the aggregates, or our soul or self is one, and the aggregates are totally separate things. That means this self, if you want to call the soul the self, a lot of people want to call the soul the self. Actually, no, it's very different. But if you want to call it, and they think this soul is different, it's one different entity, and these aggregates, the perceptions, the feelings, the thoughts are completely different. So you're walking with no mind. You're only walking and doing things with only their aggregates, and the self is a different entity. That means the mind is different. How can it be? How can it be? The mind is different, and then the body. That means you're walking zombie, right? And we know when we sit here, the body sitting here, what is working, what is being the most active part is the mind at that time, right? And people think that the mind is the soul. Sometimes people think that the mind is the soul, but the mind is not the soul. The mind is just a mind. The mind is just a part of this human existence, which is made up by two parts. One part is the material form. The other part is the mental form. The mental and the physical. So it combines together to make a complete human being. But when we die, this physical form, the material form, disintegrates or degrades. Getting old, degraded. But this mental consciousness, the mental energy still flows on. And you call this mental energy the soul? No. Because they believe the soul is permanent. And permanently existing and permanently not changing. But yet, this mental energy is not permanently existing, is permanently changing. It's permanently changing. That means it's impermanence. Okay, it's ever changing. So believing in the existence of a permanent self or soul could become a very strong obstacle or shackle for one to reach the first stage of enlightenment. And now you say that I don't believe in this. Good. You're getting there. You're getting there. Reaching the first stage of enlightenment. At least you have one less obstacle by not believing in this. Because why? Why do you think this is an obstacle? Why do you think that believing in a permanent soul or self is an obstacle?
For permanent, why are we trying to change?
Exactly. We don't need to change. Why do we need to practice then? Right? Why do we need to change to become a happier person? a more generous person, a more loving person. We don't need to change, right?
This is a sticky one. It's really interesting because I thought that I was okay with it for a while, but then it came up again and again, and it's there's a certain safety in it.
Yes.
In believing in this kind of
That bubble that we talk about, right?
Yeah. So and it's really interesting to see it, even after so many years of thinking that it was gone, to see it come up again, and
Yeah.
and that's the stickiness of that safety.
That's why you still haven't reached that first stage of enlightenment. It's true. It's true. It's really, yes, Paul.
I don't know if I can explain it right. I think a lot of the West or the belief in the self or the soul is that permanence, but what you experience or the events will change. But that anchor of what that happens to is this soul or self.
Yeah.
But what I'm starting to experience is that
Even that.
changes.
Yes. The anchor.
Yeah, that anchor is constantly changing. So that's what I think it's starting to.
You see, because of your own experience, you start to understand. But if people don't experience in the meditation and they don't have a way to open up this avenue, they will never be able to walk on this avenue to practice. They will never understand this changing. They will never would have experienced this changing. And if they don't experience this changing, this changes, they will never come into terms with there is no existence of a permanent soul. They will never come to terms with that.
There's an expression in Goethe's Faust. I wonder what you make of it, sister. To the passing moment, stay a little, you are so beautiful.
Stay a little, you are so beautiful. Okay. So, yeah, you want to say something more, Eva? Okay. So that's stickiness. Yeah, it's good that it keeps on coming. That means you keeps on paying attention to it, and you keeps on understanding a little bit more and more. That's okay. You think that you have dealt with it. If you haven't dealt with it, that's okay. That's why we need to practice, to allow it to come, allow it to arise, allow it to arise, and deal with it, and deal with it, and deal with it. And eventually this shackle will be completely abolished. One day. You have something to say?
Maybe. I think because I grew up as I was raised as a
Catholic.
Christian.
Yeah.
Denomination. I think that's when I was young. Came to my senses that with Christianity. I think what it means to me was when the story of Judas when he betrayed Jesus. I think because the Bible says, or in Christianity, whatever you do in life, you've been judged already.
You've been judged.
So in this case, that if I was Judas, it doesn't matter. I couldn't change because I was permanent.
Yeah.
Because I would betray Jesus, whatever, regardless.
Yeah.
Change his heart. So basically, this is permanent. Judas was permanent.
Yes.
In Christianity.
Yes.
Christian world.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Right. In this case, in Buddhism,
You can be a different Judas.
Yeah.
All over.
He had no choice. So
yeah.
if you're going to judge Judas, he had no choice to change or to be
Yeah.
saved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 Great. Good. Yeah. All right. And the second, it was only 5 minutes too. The second is quite long. Well, let's see. We'll try. The second is the doubt in the teachings of the Buddha. It's the main theme of the teachings we know is this cultivation of morality and sila we call it, and concentration in samadhi, and the wisdom is called panya. So we know the main theme of the teachings is the cultivation of these, and we doubt about these teachings. We doubt about the possibility of these teachings to bring happiness, to bring lasting happiness. Oh, you think that I cut out all my alcohol and I'll be happy? No, I won't be happy. Cut out all my alcohol, that means you try to abide by this morality, and I won't be happy because I will be thinking of my alcohol all the time. That is a very, very wrong understanding. The happiness that the Buddha taught was this kind of mental happiness rather than this material, sensually fulfilling happiness. So why would the cultivation of morality will bring eventual happiness? When we talk about the precepts, we know anything that we don't want people to do to us, because we will be very unhappy with somebody have, taken my bank book and clear out my bank account, or rape my sister. That would be causing a lot of grief. And I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to my family. And same to others and to others' family. They don't want such thing to happen to them. That's why we need to respect each other. That's why we need to actually cultivate the morality, to build up this harmonious society. That's the foundation, is to respect each others and not to hurt and harm the others, because we don't want others to hurt or hurt us. Okay? So the concentration we develop on the cushion, we develop on the mindfulness during the daily life, and when these two stages are developed, and we start to understand things through our own experience, that understanding, that seeing, that truth is the wisdom. And the wisdom doesn't come from books, doesn't come from hearing, doesn't come from reading. Okay, doesn't come from there. But that knowledge, you can validate your own experience. You can say, oh, this is what the Buddha said. Oh, this is what is impermanent. Okay, only when you start to experience that, you start to validate that, and then you start, oh yes, aha moment. Oh no, I don't want to be attached to that. I don't want to have so much grief, because this is so impermanently changing. It's completely changing. And a wrong person, a person who's doing wrong now, could be doing some very good things tomorrow, because this is impermanent. But all we think is, oh, he's bad, he's very bad, he's permanently bad. That's wrong. That's a heartfelt laugh. This is, when we start to give chances to others, we start to give chances to ourselves. Okay? So that's the wisdom that we're talking about. That real understanding, okay, of the existence, of the nature, of the characteristics of all existence. And also the doubt that who am I, why am I like this, and do I exist, do I not exist, is there a heaven or hell, all these philosophical thing. Will I be reborn where, and what kind of life I'll have, and all these philosophical interpretation, you try to put it away, and you start to cast out all that doubt, and doubt that this cultivation will bring lasting happiness. Okay, that's what we talk about. So all these doubts actually blindfold us and causes a lot of confusion and disruption and disturbance to our mind. And also, when it causes disturbance to our mind, it definitely will cause disturbance to our own practice. Okay. I remember there was a lady who used to come to this Dhamma sharing. She's very kind, very diligent in her mindfulness practice. It's very strange when we moved from there to here, and she came once more, and then she disappeared. And then I think in 3 months' time, she sent me an email and said, Sister Jessie, I'm sorry, I cannot attend any more of your teachings because it's against my religion. I said, oh, I see. And I don't want to betray my religion. I said, oh, I see. Okay. So she has doubts about this teachings. She thinks these teachings is actually an obstacle to her religious practice. She doesn't think these teachings, when she understands the teachings of the Buddha, then she will start to see more and more how can she actually improve herself and also to become a better Christian. And I said, it's okay as long as you are happy. And she said, I'll keep meditating. That's one thing that she will keep, she said. Good thing that, she said, but I don't know whether she will be coerced into not keeping the meditation from her congregation. But anyway, it's very sad to see this happening to human beings, to the human world. Because if we start to have an open eye and open mind to really start to let the Buddhist teachings come to our face and our eyes, and we start to understand and read them, we know they are so true. There's no one word of lying in them, and it's so true. And yet we are so blindfolded by the doubts of on his teachings, because this is actually a very personal thing. And the Buddha always asks us, in order to deal with this doubt, we always have to sit tight and sit back to actually notice the most important things, the arising and the passing of all these questions, all these doubts. Just watch. Do not follow them. Do not worry about them. Do not try to investigate or interpret them. Just watch. And these doubts will eventually go away. And because just by merely reasoning or by thinking, you actually would strengthen the doubt rather than actually eradicating more. All right? Okay? So if you start to watch these doubts, and you will start to actually understand more and more, and this confidence will naturally come, because you will experience that yourself. You will experience what he was teaching. Okay. We are not actually believing in the Buddha. We are actually experiencing the truth of his teachings. Because how can you believe in the Buddha? He's not here. It's just a representation of him, in forms. And you ask me, do I believe in this wooden statue? No, I don't. I only believe in the experience, in my own experience of his teachings. That's all I believe in. And I think that's good enough for me to continue on this path.